So I got $650 million on my mind.
And privacy for me.
Hi all, welcome to Windshield Time. It is December 12th, about 11 p.m. because that's how we roll. I have no idea which show number this is. I have no idea which COVID-19 pandemic show this is. I just know that we're somewhere in the 3 minus 11, like 9 months. Somewhere in 9 months.
Yeah, and we have a queue of 5, 6, 7 shows that haven't been published yet. So this will be published before those.
What's Windshield Time?
Windshield Time is a podcast about money and investing. So hopefully it's funformational.
I'm Arry. I'm not Arry. I'm Luggage Donkey. Come attack me on Twitter.
Or not. I'm Arry in Seattle.
Are we journalists?
Definitely not.
Are we financial advisors?
Definitely not.
Do we have opinions?
A lot of them.
All right. What do you want to do?
Oh, let's do some Satoshi math.
All right.
Did you check the price of Bitcoin?
No, I did not.
We're getting near 19,000 so far, so want to talk about Satoshis. They're the smallest denomination of Bitcoins. You can have 100 pennies in $1 US, so you can have 100 million Satoshis in every Bitcoin. And so since Bitcoin is at $19,000, and to figure out how many Satoshis are on $1, you take $1 and you divide it by 0.0001900, and you get...
Wow, you're fast on the Satoshi math.
5,260 sats for every $1 Bitcoin at $19,000. So check it out.
The higher the dollars per Bitcoin, the fewer the sats you get per dollar.
Cool.
Thank you to the WTIA for their continued sponsorship.
Yes, the Washington Technology Industry Association, representing over 1,100 technology companies in the Pacific Northwest, creating one collective voice when it comes to talking to policymakers, innovators, and investors.
So I'll just go ahead and start. So apparently Michael Saylor is so enamored with Bitcoin because it's the most successful asset of the last decade, easily. There was a senior note offering of $400 million, and the intent was clearly stated in black and white text to use the funds to buy Bitcoin.
Crazy. There
was a lot of interest in it, and the $400 million turned into $650 million by institutional investors. So that is greater than 50% greater interest in the $400 million offering, and it turned into $650 million, and it was closed in a matter of days. Yeah. So announced, a couple of days later, closed. $650 million.
So the guy's going to be like buying $1 billion worth of Bitcoin this year.
He will have bought in total $1 billion worth of Bitcoin, yeah.
Isn't that crazy? It's crazy.
Or sane. Really sane.
Yeah, he's like, because he's a Bitcoin
and rational.
Hedge fund. He's a Bitcoin hedge fund now. MicroStrategy is now a Bitcoin hedge fund.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it, yeah.
Yeah, and they happen to do a little consulting and business intelligence software on the side.
Yeah.
Basically, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's the chairman, CEO, and founder, so he can do whatever he wants. Right?
Kind of, yeah. All right.
Yeah. Well, we're going to be talking with my friend that I met while in Aspen, Rob Viglione, CEO and founder of Horizen. And back then, he was the founder and CEO of a privacy coin. I think it was called Zen Cash. So now he's working on Horizen, and apparently he's still focused on privacy. And, you know, he has a mathematics and physicist background, so super smart. And he got into cryptography and Bitcoin and all this stuff, and he felt that big use case around privacy and enterprise was really missing. And so he went and built it. So we spent about an hour talking to Rob, and
You spent an hour.
I spent an hour. Yeah, we were gonna just do a quick catch-up call, and then I was like, oh, we should just record this for fun. And we recorded, and I was like, oh, we should just put it into the podcast. So here we are. He's really, really awesome. And actually, about a few days ago, they announced a partnership with Dragon Chain.
Oh,
crazy.
Shout out to Joe Rhodes.
Yeah. So I haven't looked at the news yet, but I just saw some headlines about Horizen and Dragon Chain doing some stuff together. So I thought that was really just, serendipitous. Yeah, that's about it.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you again to the WTIA for the sponsorship. Thank you to Maddie Satz for reading the disclosures, disclaimers, awesomeness that we have playing at the end of every show. And what else?
That's it. Thank you to our listeners for being on this journey with us. Our pace is a little bit erratic and
discombobulated.
There's a lot of life changes going on over the past.
A lot of life changes.
A lot of stuff going on over the last 2 months,
Yeah.
And now we're into the holidays and stuff. So please bear with us as we get our feet back on the ground again, and we'll get rolling into 2021 and figure out how this is gonna work. But we're not giving up.
All right. Thanks, y'all.
Together we rise.
Be nice. Bye.
Bye-bye. And we are recording. All right. So long time no see, Robert. How are you doing?
Good, good. I think the last time we saw each other, we were on that panel, right? With, was it in Aspen?
Oh, was it in Aspen? 2017 Aspen.
Seriously, a long, long time.
Wow.
I think that was the last time we actually saw each other. I mean, we've spoken since.
Yeah, that might be it. I mean, I feel like I've seen you in Europe somewhere, but I can't remember where. I mean, it's all a blur.
Yeah, yeah. So how have you been since at least 2017?
Doing well. Had a baby, so now I have 2 kids.
Me too. Me too. 1 kid.
1 kid? Awesome.
So, congratulations. Yeah, a little baby girl. She's super cute.
Oh, yeah. I had a little boy, and he's now 18 months old. So.
Yeah. Yeah, she's 22 months now, so not so far apart.
Oh, maybe they'll meet someday.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
And then I've been working on some policy stuff, so I got involved and started the Blockchain Council here in the Pacific Northwest, and then have been doing a little bit of side consulting, sort of serving as a fractional COO to various companies. Yeah. And then, childcare and pandemic and cooking 3 meals a day.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of occupies the time quickly. The days fly.
Yeah, and then I also just signed up as a blockchain educator. So now doing that full-time, building curriculum and teaching too.
Awesome. Where? Like, what's the platform?
So it's with the Coding Dojo.
Okay.
They're launching in international markets, and they're really interested in learning the blockchain bootcamp curriculum. So been building
awesome.
that. Yeah. How about yourself?
Wow, you're staying busy. Well, we moved to Puerto Rico actually in February of this year.
Oh, awesome.
So yes, that was pretty cool. We've actually since we met you, we've been bouncing around. We basically put our household goods in storage and just kind of hit the road. And we were in a bunch of places. We ended up settling. So we launched an office in Milan. Like actually, our company's only office is in Milan, Italy.
Wow.
We have a team there.
Wow.
Yeah, then we were living in Panama and just kind of splitting time between Panama and Milan. And now we live in Puerto Rico, and we would split time in Milan, but with the pandemic, we were there when it started in, like, remember, just outside of Milan. And we were at a wedding, like literally the week that the pandemic hit outside of Milan. We were in a wedding outside of Milan in the country. And we were just so lucky. We realized something was wrong one night when we strolled casually into a grocery store and people were panicking. Like the shelves were empty, people were bumping us, and like it was like in these Armageddon movies.
Wow.
And then later that evening we got back to the Airbnb and realized, okay, let me call the airline and get us out of here. first flight we can. And basically that first flight was like the last flight that Delta Airlines took out of Milan. So
wow, that's crazy. So then, like, you're living like a truly decentral life.
well, now we're kind of sedentary now. We have our home and we've been stuck here, since March. So we got back here in March, and we've been here since. And honestly, I've loved the no travel. It's been so nice, except for seeing our team.
Oh wow, wow. So then, like, since we are recording this, like, to give background on yourself, like, for people that don't know you, who are you?
Sure, I'm Rob Viglione. I mean, background, physicist, mathematician, went into the Air Force as an officer, working in Space Command, working on satellites and intel systems, got out of the military life and went back for my PhD in finance. So I switched from physics and math to economics and finance. And while I was doing that, I started working, my dissertation work actually was in crypto finance. I got to teach a blockchain applications in finance course at the University of South Carolina. So that was fun. Taught that for a couple semesters. They hired me back as an adjunct. And then while I was still, like, after like all the qualifiers and comps and all that, I started working for some startups part-time in crypto. And that turned into launching Zen Cash back in 2017. And that's when we met, basically right after we had launched Zen Cash, which was bootstrapped with Zcash, privacy tech. And the idea for Zen Cash, actually, this was back in my academic days, two things I wanted to see fixed with Bitcoin, or at least experimented with, right? I mean, it's one big experiment. It was on the sustainable economics. I didn't think that, marginal rewards to one stakeholder class made sense for like long-term equilibrium. And I think a lot of what was driving, and still what is driving Bitcoin forward, a lot of it, and like there's still like it's the best ecosystem, but a lot that was driving forward was just kind of the vested interest of people that got rich in Bitcoin early on and wanting to see the ecosystem proliferate and expand, right? But they had the resources because they basically had this wealth shock of everyone getting rich and then wanting to use that wealth to propel the ecosystem. But let's talk 10, 20 years from now. You're not going to convince a junior developer to graduate college and start coding for free because they just love something. And like, there will be people who do that, but I mean, at some point, people need to eat and be compensated. So anyway, the first problem with Zen Cash was, let's think about like more of a holistic equilibrium and different types of stakeholder classes that contribute to an ecosystem, and parse out the rewards on the margin to those that contribute on the margin. Right. So that was idea number one. That was really the economics idea. Idea number two, and why we bootstrapped with Zcash technology, was because we wanted to see privacy that scales. And we really loved the zero knowledge stuff, and we wanted to build a team that was specialized in zero knowledge cryptography. And the idea behind zero knowledge crypto is you can actually obfuscate data. You could publish something to a public ledger obfuscated. So you could think about, like, Zcash does it with coin transfer, so you can kind of basically like anonymize coin transfer. But for us, we have taken the tech in the last 2 years has been on extending that to data privacy and using zero knowledge actually as a proving system for a blockchain of blockchains ecosystem or blockchains architecture. So we actually have the only decentralized sidechain system in the industry right now. It's on testnet. We're moving that to production middle of next year, but it's one that uses zero knowledge crypto circuits and rollup, or basically recursive snarks, to do state transition capture and pass certificates back to a main blockchain. So you can have all of these independent blockchains that function as side chains, but then they actually all communicate back to the main Horizen blockchain. Now, so Zen Cash turned into Horizen. We rebranded a couple of years ago, and that's our thing now. It's data privacy that scales and like massive security using a variety of cryptographic tools, including snarks. So that's it in a nutshell, who I am and what we've been doing over the years. The fund's really just getting started for Horizen, and still the market is still waking up to even knowing who we are and what we're doing. Because I think when we launched, people just thought a privacy coin. Well, that wasn't the point of it. The point was to actually take that tech and extend it to more useful things.
So like in layman terms, I guess, like for an average human, like why is zero knowledge important? Why is privacy important? Like feel like, you know, the Bitcoin, one of the fundamentals is that it's pseudo-anonymous, and that's good enough. Is it not good enough?
No, it's good enough for, it depends. Whenever we talk about sufficiency requirements, it's for what, right? And for what Bitcoin does, it's for sure good enough, and it's killing it across many, many areas. But when you're talking about getting, using our blockchain technology to do things like businesses putting information on a public ledger, they're not going to want to put proprietary or customer information on a ledger that either their competitors can see or violates their customer privacy, right? And imagine like different competitors, aren't going to want to share everything with the world, right? So if you want to use blockchain technology, this public ledger technology, in a decentralized way, I'm not talking about the private ledger stuff. Like there's that world, and then there's the public decentralized world that we're in. And if you want to publish things to a public ledger, you have to protect the privacy of the data that gets published. And even from a pragmatic perspective, you want to do business in Europe, you've got GDPR compliance regulations now. Like you need to make sure you're protecting user data. So that's what we're all about, and that's why we've really honed in on the zero knowledge stuff and gotten really good at it.
So it's a B2B use case, or like governments, or like they really need to protect their proprietary or confidential information. I see.
Totally. And from the customer's perspective too. As a customer, for many things, I don't want my personal information out there on ledgers for different things.
Yeah, that's true. So then, like with GDPR, you have from what I remember in 2018, you had to have the ability for the customer to request a delete of the data. Yeah. Like how do you handle that?
I mean, we don't. So right now, first of all, let's put things in perspective. We're still on testnet, and what we're building is an open protocol. So we're not actually building the business applications. So that type of question would be great for those that build business applications on our system. And we have a dozen use cases that are being built now, but it's still on testnet. And for businesses that want to do that, so we provide the toolkit that can offer this compliance, infrastructure, but then it's up to the applications to build it into their tool.
So it's for businesses that really want to embrace the decentralized blockchain world and not go the hyperledger or like super private network, where it's basically like
exactly right. Yeah, and the thing.
Sorry.
That's exactly right. Yeah, no, sorry, there's a little bit of a lag. You've nailed it. For businesses that want to actually make use of a decentralized technology or decentralized ledger, we're a great solution for them. Now, interestingly, we do have a prototype for an audit chain to be able to audit private chains, which is interesting. So that's another fun application of like a product that we have is you can actually audit what goes on a private network, and our technology could be used in a private setting that uses the public network to actually validate that what happened on the private network at least conformed to the rules that you published. So that's another interesting use of zero knowledge crypto, is to be able to pass these certificates that really preserve the privacy of what happened underneath the hood, but still get the characteristics of decentralization.
Wow. So like what brought you into this world? So you said you studied it in your academic world, but like what really triggered you to commit your life to this?
Yeah, it was, I was an early, I lucked out from being just a libertarian interested in this type of technology early on. So I came into Bitcoin from the basic idea of creating a free market money, and I loved that idea. It really resonated with me, and then going beyond there, the social implications of being able to create a peer-to-peer money. I loved it. So that got me into Bitcoin early enough to be able to spend some time back in academia. In academia, I started getting to more of the intellectual side of it, and then what can we do beyond just the monetary stuff? And that's where it really got into what is today Horizen.
What about like even before that? So were you always libertarian, or was your family libertarian, or?
No, not at all. Actually, so I would say my family is apolitical, and I feel like apolitical as well, right? By the way, I would say I got into libertarianism more from like a Milton Friedman economics libertarianism. Then I went down the rabbit hole of getting into the philosophy of libertarianism, and today I will describe myself philosophically very much libertarian, and I would say philosophically anarchist libertarian. But when it comes to the practical, how do we actually organize 7 billion human beings in a sense where we don't kill each other and destroy everything to the point where we can live peacefully and actually build useful things? I do believe in that, you know, political systems are important, and, you know, we've evolved, you know, to where we are today for a reason. And I'm not so quick to just discount the, you know, the last few thousand years of evolution, like social evolution, just because I lean with the, you know, philosophy of libertarianism. That said, like it's still, to me, the dominant philosophy. How can you argue that people don't have a right to their lives? I think it's always, it's shocking to try to argue that you don't have a right to your life. It's something else to say, okay, well, you have a right to your life, but if we all want to live together, maybe we need some constraints on society. That's a different story. But to say philosophically libertarianism doesn't make sense, I think is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe practically it doesn't make sense, but and that, even that's TBD, right? We're learning as we go.
I guess, was there a tipping point that, like, or a book or an influencer that got you and introduced you to, like, the Milton or the Mises or like these folks?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just list off a bunch of them. So starting with Milton Friedman, then you've got the Friedrich Hayeks of the world, the Ludwig von Mises, you know, the usual suspects there, right? Then you can get into like the Rothbardianism, get into like Market for Liberty, the Tenenbaums, you know, more from like that philosophical stretch of it. And then from there, I mean, I'll tell you, my information diet today is much more diversified than it was, say, 10 years ago when I was really into to politics. What I'll say, especially after getting the PhD in financial economics, is the world is more complex and rich than, you know, any kind of ism likes to acknowledge. So I'm not a fan of isms at all. I don't think that we should live, or we should not use an ism to think about, to make all of our decisions in life. So I as of now, my information diet is extremely varied, and I try to consume information that challenges my most closely held beliefs. The more you can challenge, the more I want to read it, right? So that's where I am today, and it's, I think, a healthier perspective.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, like in becoming a blockchain educator, I thought I understood this whole space really well, like last year. And then this year I've just been consuming, reading, listening, writing. And I really realized, like, I know nothing.
That's how I feel. Like the more I learn, the more I realize I really don't know. But that's the beauty of life, right? Is this constant journey of knowledge.
Yeah. And then on top of it, I realized, like, I've spent a good 30 years of my life being taught that something is truth and, like, the only truth. Like, you know, you go through high school and you take your initial econ class, and you go to college, and, you know, I went the typical, you know, nerdy route and going to college and, you know, taking econ and learning business there. And then you come out and you learn about the consumer price index, and you learn about, you know, this economics and inflation and what's right and how banks work. And then everything is broken today now. After all this reading, I'm like, what's truth?
Yeah.
What's real?
Yeah, exactly. You know, I think that's a dangerous, it's a dangerous time in a way of thinking about knowledge, because with proliferation of information with the internet, some amazing things and a dark side as well, is because it's so easy to proliferate information. It's also so easy to proliferate BS and confuse people.
Yeah.
Right? So that's one thing that we have is, you know, the idea of fake news. Pick your favorite, you know, political tribe, and they'll, you know, accuse the other side of being fake news. But I mean, it is a dangerous concept of what is truth, and how do we know this? What sources could we actually take as credible, and how do we synthesize this? Even like the most educated people who are most knowledgeable on particular topics still probably have a really hard time figuring out, you know, what's a good baseline.
Yeah. And just figuring out, like, who should be my sources of truth,
Right.
or inform my source, my version of the truth. And then, you know, there is all this information on the internet, but I'm finding the best way to kind of help my brain synthesize and come up with, like, my version of the truth is to just actually talk to people. They've got their own processes, and they can kind of tell me, like, yeah, it's sort of more like this. I'm like, oh.
Agreed. And, you know, we still do have the scientific method is tried and true, and we can refer to the scientific method, but not everyone uses it or adheres to it the right way. But it is a method for of what constitutes truth. How do you objectively try to evaluate something to determine whether or not it's true, right? And I think that this is something we should lean on more. And I do have actually a both a healthy respect for experts and a healthy criticism or healthy skepticism of experts. I think you really have to kind of come somewhere in the middle and not be, completely blinded one way or another.
Hmm. So another question, I'm working with a lot of students or people that want to enter the blockchain and crypto industry. And then I talk to a lot of folks that are hiring people, and they have a lot of open spots in the blockchain and crypto industry. And there's like this weird thing going on where like there's so many open spots, but not enough people to fill them. And there's a lot of people that want to work there, but they're not getting in. So like, what do you think is really going on here? Or like,
I'll tell you exactly from my perspective is it's a mismatch because it's a new industry. It's a mismatch on requirements versus skill set availability.
mm-hmm.
And just because someone's really into crypto or wants to get in early or has gotten in early, actually, it doesn't mean they're actually good engineers. And I'm speaking from the technical perspective here, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are so many other roles that we need in the industry. But on the technical side is where I think you have the biggest disconnect because it is new. Everything's new. I mean, okay, people might say the technology is not that new. It's been around for a while. We know how to do hashes. We know how to do like distributed consensus, but putting all of these things together in the combination that we have now is new, and we're still training people. And so from our perspective of actually hiring and building a team in the industry it's taken us a long time. Literally, it's taken us 3 years to build what we think is an amazing team right now. And we have something like 20 to 25 engineers on that team. It's still relatively very small, but it's taken so many years. And then once you bring people in, and we try to, obviously set a really high bar because at this stage of the industry, because everything's new and still R&D to product market fit, there's a lot of uncertainty. You really need top tier talent. And we've worked with people that aren't top tier, and now we've made sure that our team that we retain are really top tier. And it's tough training them, curating that team, and getting them really active and engaged. And it's not for everyone. So what I'll tell people for advice, and I've said this, is if you're a young engineer and you want to get in, just jump onto an open source repository for your favorite project and start building, start contributing, start looking at open issues, see if you can close them, submit your PRs, and start building some credibility. And at Horizen, we've actually built a tool for this because we want people to come in. It's called the Horizen Developer Environment, HDE. We basically curate dev tasks and offer bounties on them. So you can come to HDE and look at what's available. What work do we have in the repos that you might be able to contribute to? And this is a great way. If you're a student or new to the industry, start contributing, earn your street cred by actually submitting code.
It's a really good idea. After I'll have to get the links from you and
yeah, sure.
Share it, and also share it with my students to see if anybody wants to do it. Does like having a math or your physics background or finance background help a person more or less?
100%, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's a weird combo of like math, finance, and software defines crypto in a way, right? Because the crypto is math and finance is the bulk of the applications that are out there now. And then obviously your software background is really important for the industry. And some confluence of these things really helps. But in general, being able to think analytically and solve problems is really important. And I think as an industry, so we live in this open source world where it's so easy to clone a repository and launch a new project based on work that other people have done. And we did this when we launched, right? Since then, we've written hundreds of thousands of lines of code on our own. But it's so easy to start that way, which means you have so many projects that launch very sophisticated technology without really understanding what's under the hood.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to really just get like the basic, stuff here. And I think having that technical background really helps.
I have a lot of blockchain startups in the community that are, just getting started or trying to fundraise. And as now the experienced one with many years, I'm many years in the world of blockchain and crypto. Like, what would be your advice to them? Because they're struggling with fundraising or finding team members, just all of it.
It's so hard. Honestly, bootstrapping a high quality project these days is very tough. It's easy in one sense because if this is an open source world and the tools are out there. So they're literally out there on other repositories. You can copy them and launch, right? But getting that secret sauce, so that mix of like the human talent and like a product market fit is really tough. I think in the earliest days, everything was so new that people were throwing money at everything because they had no idea what was going on, right? And maybe we're still to some extent in that phase, maybe a little bit, but we're maturing to the point where you actually have to have a product and you actually have to have revenues coming in. I'm kind of shocked, actually. We've been doing we've been having a lot of meetings with other organizations in the industry just to get to know them and see if we can collaborate in some way. And I'm shocked by how other companies have been able to raise so much money without actually having a product. And I'll ask them, like, so literally, like, how was your Series A process when you had no product and no revenue? Like, how did you convince people to give you money? But like, people were getting tens of millions of dollars without having $1 in revenue or Bitcoin in revenue, right? So I think we're starting to, like, we're holding off for our Series A until we get our product to market next year and book our first $1 million in ARR, and then we're going to hit up the Series A. But I think we're finally getting to that traditional world, and I'm looking forward to it because I think it was way too much of a Wild West beforehand.
It's still kind of a Wild West too, because like even in 2020, I'm noticing a lot of the valuations are really, really high for crypto companies versus other companies. And you look at, well, the opportunity is huge, right? Just in general, in the world of cryptocurrencies and blockchain, yes. But in terms of traction, a lot of these companies aren't where a typical Series A company is. And so I'm
not even close. They're like pre-seed and getting Series A valuations, right?
You're getting like $20 to $45 million valuations, but the traction's more like a $4 to $5 million valuation company. I'm going, how does this work? How does this work?
Yeah. So it's easy to be very cynical about it, and like I have one part cynicism and one part optimism on this. Like the optimistic part is, like you said, it's an extremely high growth industry, so people are doing their best guess at valuations on multiples that are higher than typical because this is such a rapidly growing industry. There's so much opportunity. The cynical side is there's so much money in here that's really like not what we would consider smart money, like really, because there's so much information asymmetry in the market. Let's put it that way, econ talk. There's so much info asymmetry between founders and investors that investors are putting money in things that honestly they shouldn't. They really don't know what's going on there, and these firms haven't proven themselves to the extent they should to get these types of valuations. But it's very tantalizing. As a CEO of a company right now that's going to go out for a Series A, yay, high valuations, I love it. But at the same time, I want to make sure that we're actually covering our bases by getting like good ARR and like really like a great moat tech product that has a big community around it, and just really checking the boxes that you probably should check to get a reasonable valuation. So I don't know, the truth's usually in the middle somewhere. Something important is going on in the industry.
Something is, yeah. Another topic that's top of mind, especially in 2020, is this whole idea of like diversity and inclusion, and like this is a big topic across the world, and for me, like very real in the United States. Do you think about that much as a CEO, founder, and leader of a tech company?
I do. Honestly, I'm pissed that we have no female engineers on our team. Honestly, it's something that I've told our HR and I've told our engineering team. But it's not the point where we'll never hire someone purely based on some characteristic, right? Like we hire people based on their qualities, not some label of who they are. Like I want to know who they really are, and we're going to hire them based on that. But let's be honest, the world is not exactly fair. And so we've gotten to where we are as a society through a very rough history of a lot of discrimination, a lot of unfair opportunities for people. So it's not that we've had a level playing field where everyone has had the same opportunity set, and when they go to the job market, they have an equal standing as someone else. So to the extent that we can factor that in, I absolutely want to. And I'll tell you from a pragmatic perspective is you want diversity and inclusion on your team for a number of reasons. Number one, you get better outcomes if you have diversity in your team, because you have heterogeneity in your like ways of thinking, the ways of doing things. You can have counterbalancing opinions and ways you wouldn't get if you only have a homogeneous into it. I want us to have a healthy workforce that actually accounts for these different types of things, but do it in a way that makes sense, that can actually scale. But I'm not going to claim that I'm an expert at all. We're still a very small company in the grand scheme of things. But I think it's a very important topic.
I know we're coming on time, or we're at time. Like, can you go a little longer?
Of course, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I struggle with this. Like, we're working with several overseas clients right now, like one of which is in Saudi Arabia, and I'm finding like Saudi Arabians are really putting some focus and intention and investment in re-educating their workforce from an oil economy to a digital economy, which I think is
Yep.
amazing. And I wish
Yep.
the United States would do that sooner rather than later.
Yep.
Uh,
Totally, absolutely.
but the classes are actually mostly women finishing masters and PhDs, technical and wanting to learn more. And so maybe that'll be a way to help, diversify the workforce more and more globally. But yeah, I don't know.
Honestly, that's really encouraging to hear. And I think about this. I have a daughter myself, and I want her to grow up thinking that she can do anything. I don't want any type of even latent, bias in there that, deters her from studying something that, she might actually be really good at, but there might be some preconceived idea that that's not appropriate for whatever. I don't want that. I want her exposed to every single opportunity possible, and I want her to boldly charge at anything that she wants. Right. And that's where I want to support her. And when I think, what kind of world do I want for my daughter? It's one where we have to tear down all biases, tear down all these, silly walls that we put on society and culture, and just really make sure that we're building the type of world that we want for our children.
Right. Yeah, totally. I was going to jump another topic because since I have you right now,
Yeah, this is fun.
you have the math and physics background, and you're also like crypto finance background, and you've been in the space for quite some time. So like, there's a lot of stuff happening in 2020. Like DeFi, like really became a thing, and it happened literally to me overnight. Like I was like, oh, DeFi, and then I looked back and I was like, oh my god, DeFi, and then Sushi's and then it was like DeFi, and then there's CBDCs, and everyone's like stable coins, and there's a stable act going on right now, and everyone's like, what is that?
Yeah.
Like, what do you think is going to happen over the next couple of years? Oh yeah, and then the other thing is like Bitcoin's 100K, no, 253K. Like,
Yeah.
what do you think is going to happen in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think so. The way I look at it, by the way, it completely floored me as well. This DeFi, I had the exact same reaction to it because we've been building for years on things that, yeah, sure, we'll support DeFi type applications, but I didn't think of this as the next bubble at all. And hey, like everything looks like a bubble or doesn't look like a bubble until it is, and you never know until ex post. But I'll say from this, there's so much money and enthusiasm going into the segment of the market that something real is going on, something awesome is going on. I think that whenever you see this type of early market phenomena where like you have crazy high expectations and huge flows of funds, you're going to have a lot of waste, you're going to have a lot of fraud, abuse, you're going to have a lot of, you name it. But there will be definitely a kernel of real innovation and real like disruption that's going on. So I think we're going to take out of this something amazing that's going to come out of it and really influence the industry and influence society. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, there's a lot of innovation. There's a lot of learnings happening.
Exactly. It's happening real time. But it's crazy though that you have so much money going into experimental products, and then you see them failing all the time, right? You have so many like smart contracts that get busted, get hacked, or whatever, and people lose hundreds of millions of dollars. It's just totally insane. But like at the same time, it's innovation on steroids. So you gotta love it and hate it at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of need it, and it shows that the world needs it. Like we found something that could be better, and so after many painful incidences, it will be like, let's not do it again. Let's all standardize and let's not all do this one again. Yeah,
it's easy to point a finger and point out flaws of things. It's much harder to actually get out there and be the innovator and take those risks. Whether you're an investor or you're the actual innovator, it's hard to do that. So we shouldn't look at it too cynically. We should look at this and really applaud the innovators, applaud those that are willing to take these risky bets. I think the danger would be if regulators look at what's going on and really have a significant backlash on it, where they could stifle innovation. That would be the wrong approach. Mm-hmm. And I think that you said the world needs this. Like the world is entering a period of like sclerotic growth, in particular in like the US and the West, sclerotic growth. And this is a really dangerous thing as we have aging populations with massive unfunded liabilities for their retirements.
What's sclerotic growth?
Oh, sclerotic growth is very low growth. So we're in a period of low growth, low growth and actually declining productivity, which is shocking because you would think like when we live in the tech world and it appears like productivity is going through the roof, but actually macro productivity numbers have been declining over time. So we're getting to the point where we have a serious problem globally if we don't get productivity up. So we need as much innovation as we can.
What kind of productivity is it? Like, you know, farming more corn and like building more bridges, or what does that mean?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So if you look at agriculture in the 1970s, Green Revolution, where you had phenomenal innovation in just how to cultivate crops, how to like prevent disease of the crops or pests from destroying them. And we had this proliferation around the world. We had massive productivity in like that sector. We had productivity in manufacturing sectors, productivity in other like major sectors. No, there is a strand of economics now that says maybe we don't know how to measure productivity anymore because we're not doing like these physical things where you can measure input and output very cleanly. It's more of a knowledge economy. So that's one thing. Maybe we're not measuring productivity properly, but there is the risk that we really do have a slowdown in productivity. And when you have a slowdown in productivity, you ultimately have a slowdown in GDP growth. And with the slowdown in GDP growth, you have a slowdown in real incomes. And then with aging populations, you could actually have these really bad long-term effects. So anyway, the world needs a serious, like what you call it, adrenaline shot of productivity growth and GDP growth, of innovation. We need it. So this industry, I think, has the potential to really drive that globally. And I want to see governments support it across the board. I want to see governments, like, I'll wax a little bit politically, is I would love the US government to invest like crazy in R&D. Invest crazy in R&D, invest in base science and technology, invest in those things that maybe private sector firms don't have the timeline for their capital source to invest in these things. Government should invest like crazy in them, while also support innovation that's going on in places like crypto and the blockchain industry.
So like if we were to extrapolate and we have like a very high performing globe in 10 years, it would just mean like everyone's producing. So the farmers are producing enough food for everybody. The people are building infrastructure on the technology side and doing research and building the standards and guidelines and policies to work and interoperate between blockchains and countries and cities and industries. Is that, I'm just extrapolating, is that?
That's what you want to see. That's exactly what would be amazing to see. Yeah, I would love that. I mean, hey, let's not be too cynical. The world works pretty well today anyway. Like there's a great book called Enlightenment Now, I believe is the name of it. Stephen Pinckney, I believe it is the author's name. The guy's a Harvard professor. He's an amazing philosopher. Really, what he did was he kind of went through a list of like 24 aspects of life and just showed how much better the world is today than it was 10, 20, 30, 100 years ago. So really, like we shouldn't be too cynical of where we are. Like the world is so much better, but that's not reason to be complacent. We really need to drive forward constantly. And the world needs innovators. The world needs this type of rapid experimentation. And guess what? Rapid experimentation and real innovation is messy. And you're going to see a lot of dirty stuff that happens. There's a lot of scammers, fraudsters out there. There's a lot of like people that really don't know what they're doing, that are getting too much capital and wasting it. But again, like I said, you have this kernel of really amazing stuff that's going on, and the world needs it.
I have another question too while I have you, since you have the finance and background. So like I've been learning about Austrian economics and Keynesian economics. We went off the gold standard in 1971 officially because of Nixon, and the US dollar became the global reserve. And so really at the end of the day, like all the policies and stuff that's going on in the US is extrapolated across the world. And then we have like this whole QE. I've learned about quantitative easing, and we're printing a lot, and 20% of the US money supply was printed in 2020 versus all other years. And like I'm taking all these stats, right? And so, but I'm also seeing like the stock market. So I've just started to learn how to trade, public stocks, and I've been learning, getting punched in the face or like winning with some. Yeah. Then I hear stats like only 49% of Americans are actually participating in the stock market with IRAs and 401ks or just stock in general. And then it's like the top 5% actually own 90% of the stocks and everyone else is, doing like $50 here, $100 here, right? So
Yeah.
then I go, that's not good. And then you learn about the Cantillon effect, and those closest to the money get most of the benefit. And I'm like, all right, so stock market is closest to the money, and like, and then you have Yellen, Janet Yellen, that just got, it's being put in, and she's like, I'm gonna let the printer presses go on the money production too, and continue that. And I go, does that mean things are just gonna get worse? It's gonna get worse for the bottom 51% of people around the world, and the other 49% are just going to be like seeing all-time new highs across the stock market and beyond. And what? Help.
I know, yeah, exactly right. I mean, I don't even know where to start. You've hit so many really important topics. So yes, what's happened in finance over the last 50 years or so has been, I think, on one hand amazing, on the other hand a real travesty for society, because we've lived in an age of central banking that's basically created like a put option on the stock market and financial assets. And, it has driven, when interest rates get driven lower, just mechanically asset prices get driven higher, right? It's just a function of how you value cash flows and ultimately the assets themselves. So that's a mechanical thing. And when you have a central bank that's willing to socialize, the downside, but privatize the upside, you have a real imbalance in society. And that's what's happened. So the downside of markets has been, like, the risk of markets has been socialized by the, the Federal Reserve and the Treasury and just,
the risk of the financial markets has been socialized means like we're printing money.
So whenever stocks go down, the central bank and sometimes Congress steps in to bail out companies, to bail out those who have taken risky bets. So it's basically, people know that they can take risky bets, and if they're large enough, they'll get bailed out. If they're politically influential enough, they'll get bailed out. So why wouldn't you take the risk? You'd be insane not to take a risk. Load on risk, load on leverage, right? And this I think is really bad for society, because you don't have the healthy just market, creative destruction that you should have in a healthy, balanced society. And then when it comes to, like, deeper down the value scale of what about real human beings? You've got not everyone has a large percentage of financial assets in their portfolios. Most people's largest real asset is their human capital and the cash flow implications of your human capital, meaning that, like, your job and what you can earn over the years in your job, and not many people have converted that into financial assets. So those that hold a large bucket of financial assets actually have been getting significantly wealthier over time relative to those that don't. That's a problem, because the people that actually we rely on every day, right, to drive our Ubers, to cook our food, to pick up our garbage, to basically do everything to keep society going without us even thinking about it. These people are being left behind in this world, right? And those who can code, those who, like, understand what a financial derivative, is, they're really making out like bandits. I think this is something that's very unsustainable. And again, I'm not trying to have like a one-dimensional backlash on it, but I do recognize that it is unhealthy, and we're not actually seeing real creative destruction of a marketplace. We're seeing like a socialize the risk and privatize the benefits, and at the end of the day, this is going to lead to a very unhealthy equilibrium. And I'll say those that are benefiting as well ought to be really scared of this, because you don't want to be the rich guy in society where everyone else is suffering, and then all of a sudden everyone looks at you like you've done something wrong. Because a lot of people don't realize what's going on. They're making a killing, their asset prices are going up, but still, like, it's not from a healthy. There are many healthy things that are going on. There's a lot of real innovation. There's a lot of Amazon's doing amazing things. Google's doing amazing things. Like, there are great companies out there that are creating real value. But at the same time, asset prices have been driven so high because of this, basically de-risking or socializing risk.
So we've seen, like, implications of what could go wrong, like French Revolution style with riots and the tech industry being seen as evil. I mean, we're faced with that a lot as the WTI. I work with the Tech Industry Association here, and we're seen as the bad guy, and we're like, we're just working. But really, it's
working like dogs as well. But, like, think that, like, this sounds like science fiction in a way, or sounds like some fictional story of society falling apart. But I mean, look, we just had a sitting president of the U.S. fail to acknowledge that he lost an election, and saying that he didn't lose, he actually won the election, but because of fraud. Well, okay, prove it. Can't, but it was fraudulent. Trust me. And you've got a large percentage of the population now that just believes them, right? So like, this is just right or wrong, whether you believe it or not. We have a significant percentage of the population that fundamentally believes that the system's unfair, it's stacked against them, and that there's some deep state that's manipulating everything against them. When people think like this, what's the long-term outcome of that? It's not healthy. It's not healthy for democracy when a president refuses to acknowledge, defeat in an election, right? So it's, I would say just more uncertainty is being introduced to society now.
Yeah. This has been really, really helpful. I really like the way you say like socialized risk and privatized benefits. That really like put perspective and a framework for me to just process the information I've been intaking. And I've been like,
it's toxic. It's a toxic combo. It's really bad.
Yeah. I could talk forever and ever and ever. I lead like a group of women right now just to get some perspectives. It's like a group of like 150 women investors, like trying to get us to talk about money, which is a whole nother ballgame. Women don't like to talk about money, let alone like consider ourselves investors. We like to be the ones that are the caretakers or the nurturers or charity workers. And so like they won't talk about it. When you get them to talk about it, like 90% of them are putting any money they have into CDs at banks. And I'm like, CDs? Those are still a thing? Like people still have CDs? Oh no! Right? And I'm like, hold on a moment. What?
Yeah.
And they're comparing CDs or like real estate. So real estate's a thing, which makes sense. It's a hard asset. But the pricing is a little bit weird across the board, and like it's not really consistent. And so yeah, I just worry about the lack of education that people have on the state of the world. We've all been miseducated to think like one thing is truth when like there's other things that we should have been taught along the way to make up our own minds about stuff. And
totally. Yeah. And even like basic education, what should be included in the basic education package? I think like how to deal with your emotions, stresses in life, basic personal finance, like these things, life skills that we're never really taught, right? Unless you go and seek that information out.
Yeah. Well, that's another topic too. Like education really needs to be rewritten. And, that's one of the reasons I signed on to like work with this company as an educator. Cause I was like, this whole system's not working. So let's, yeah.
No, I think that's fantastic. That's really cool. I still haven't wrapped my head around how education needs to change, but I think it's going to be disrupted in current form, and we really need to think about where it ought to go.
I have a thought on that. So I think everything's going to be decentralized, right? So decentralized is the theme, and I think the world kind of goes back and forth, like super centralized, like decentralization, to like, right? So everything is a rhyming factor in history. So we need to decentralize right now. So we're going to see more and more like 1 to 30% companies. So lots of small mom and pop companies are the businesses of the world, less, big behemoth Amazons and Alibabas. So like that's one thing. On the education front, instead of like big schoolrooms of like 30 to 90 students, depending on what level you're at, you're gonna see like little mini pods. And that's happening already right now because of the whole pandemic. As parents, I'm creating like a 5-6 person safety pod, and we're gonna hire a teacher to teach the students, create this little pod of education. And I think if we can do more of that, then the parents will have more say, and also hopefully learn along the way of like, what are we teaching our students, and what you want me to teach what?
right exactly. Yeah. And have more individualized education as well, and education with intent. Like what do we want to get out of the education, towards what end? I do believe that there's like core education that probably most people should have exposure to, but then there's more specialized stuff that not everyone needs to regurgitate the same stuff.
Right. Cool. Well, I don't know, like closing thoughts or like words of
wisdom. This has been amazing. Like, what a crazy catch up. So honestly, we should do this more often. This is really cool.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Thank you for teaching me. I knew likewise. Like about Zen Cash and Z Cash before, but I'm like, oh, that makes totally more sense. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, it's fun, and I'm really happy and humbled to be part of this amazing industry, and hopefully what we're doing has some positive contribution, and we'll take it from there.
Cool. And then since I'm going to be publishing this, ways that people can find you if they want to learn more or talk to you.
Yeah, for me, you can find me on Twitter. It's probably the one social that I've really used a lot. It's at Rob Viglione. And otherwise, just you can come to horizen.io. So it's Horizen because Zen is our ticker symbol. So horizen.io, one-stop shop for everything. You can get research papers to join our community conversations.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, and it was really great catching up and learning from you, and definitely we'll do this again.
Awesome. All right. That'd be great. Thank you.
All right. Welcome to Windshield time, y'all. Thanks for tuning in. This podcast is non-technical, fun, informative way to learn about money, Bitcoin, blockchains, crypto, and digital assets for busy parents and working folks who are curious about these new technologies. Dae, Arry, and their guests talk about these evolutionary systems of money and what they do, y'all. Because what part of your life does money not touch? This podcast is not financial advice, and your reactions are your total and complete responsibility, y'all. Now, thanks again and enjoy the show.
What are you doing?
Stacking sats.
You ever seen that never give up, never surrender? You ever seen the image of the stork eating the frog?
No.
And then the frog, the only thing you see is the legs and the arms, and the entire frog is swollen up by the stork. And all you see is the frog's arms grabbing onto the stork's neck.
This is real, or is it a cartoon?
It's a cartoon.
Oh, it's a cartoon?
It's a
Okay.
cartoon. Cartoon, not animation, just a cartoon, flat image. But basically it's an image of never give up, never surrender.
Never